Mighty pyramids, magnificent temples, mysterious hieroglyphs. The legacy of the ancient Egyptians has graced our globe for many thousands of years. But despite all the archaeological discoveries and research, we are still far from having unraveled all the mysteries of this exciting civilization. Above all, the imposing pyramids are among the greatest mysteries of antiquity. How did the ancient Egyptians manage to build the gigantic tombs without using modern technologies? Since the ancient Egyptian world has always been teeming with mystical secrets, particularly creative minds are looking for the most unusual possible explanations. Quite a few people who subscribe to the field of pre-astronautics, which studies the presence of extraterrestrial intelligences on Earth during prehistory and ancient times, are firmly convinced that the Egyptians received help from out of this world when erecting their monumental buildings, namely from extraterrestrial beings who were in lively exchange with the people of antiquity. As if this assumption weren't already adventurous enough, some people take this train of thought even further and believe that even the pharaohs had an extraterrestrial origin or hybrid experiences with alien beings. We'll now show you how these controversial theories are fueled and what supposed evidence their supporters bring to the table. Mysteries of the past. To understand why the mighty buildings of the Egyptians are still overshadowed by big question marks, it's worth taking a look at the world-famous Cheops Pyramid. The building, believed to be the final resting place of Pharaoh Cheops, was originally 146.6 meters high, which earned it the title of the tallest building in the world for many centuries. Depending on the historical source, between 100,000 and 360,000 workers were needed to pile up the heavy boulders over 20 years in order to construct one of the most famous structures in history. This is an extraordinary feat, and the question thus becomes, how did the workers at that time manage to shape the individual blocks in such precision? And what's more, how did they then manage to lift the estimated 3 million components, each weighing 2.5 tons? Given the sheer size of these boulders, some researchers believe that at most 10 workers could fit around a block before lifting it. As a result, each of the men would have had to lift a weight of 250 kilograms, and over quite long distances. This is a feat that seems practically impossible. Another controversial topic is the question of how the ancient Egyptian workers managed to carve the individual stones so precisely that when they were joined together, they were so perfect that not even a hair could fit through them. No less impressive is the fact that the pyramids of Giza are all in a near-perfect astronomical north-south alignment. It is generally assumed in mainstream Egyptology that the ancient Egyptians used special ramp systems to bring the blocks, which weighed several tons, into their intended positions. Other experts believe it's conceivable that the massive stones were transported on ships to an underground interchangeable elevator, which was then used to hoist them into the air. The problem is that nobody can say with certainty how the mighty Cheops Pyramid ultimately came about, where conventional explanations reach their limits. A field that is as exciting as it is hotly contested begins: the theory of pre-astronautics. Alien visitors. As already mentioned, this parascience is based on the assumption that the ancients received regular visits from extraterrestrial intelligences. The galactic beings were worshipped as supernatural deities who shared some of their secret, advanced knowledge with the inhabitants of Earth. If one follows the explanations of the convinced followers, countless artifacts and representations can be found on our globe that attest to the authenticity of the pre-astronautic thesis. Some of these incredible architectural and mechanical ancient discoveries include the aluminum wedge of Aiud in Romania, the sun gate of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, the enigmatic Colombian gold flyers, the mechanism of Antikythera found in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece, and the Palenque tomb slab from the Temple of Inscriptions in Palenque, Mexico. But there's even more to the story than people's belief that these objects were created with alien assistance. In fact, many believe that some of these extraterrestrial guests began to mix with humans over time, and even to produce offspring that resulted in alien-human hybrids. This almost unbelievable assumption is supported, among other things, by a report published by Stuart Fleischmann, assistant professor of comparative genomics at the Swiss University in Cairo some time ago. Fleischmann and his team of researchers examined the brain tissue of 9 ancient pharaohs and made an extraordinary discovery in one case. In fact, the genetic analysis showed that one of the tissue samples had a very strange genome structure that did not match the usual human DNA. Specifically, the sample showed substantially thicker bone tissue, which can be an indicator of increased brain development that exceeds the realm of human possibility. According to the advocates of pre-astronomics, this inexplicable realization was due to only one circumstance. The powerful pharaohs were not normal people, but hybrids with extraterrestrial ancestors. However, all mainstream Egyptologists reject this notion, though it's hard to definitively prove why, because Fleischmann's study is impossible to locate online. Maybe the aliens took it away, or some higher-ups on Earth didn't want it found. Or maybe it was just bad science and revoked. Who knows? But when it comes to ancient Egyptian rulers who are suspected of being from another planet, we cannot avoid one name: Akhenaten. A galactic ruler? From a historical perspective, the pharaoh of the 18th dynasty was one thing above all: hotly disputed. The reign of the ancient Egyptian king, who was born under the name of Amenephis IV, was marked by some profound upheavals. Above all, this included Akhenaten's radical decision to renounce religious traditions that worshipped many gods and henceforth place only the sun god, Aten, at the center of ritual worship, causing many historians to refer to Akhenaten as the first monotheist. Moreover, this god was no longer depicted in a human-like form, but as the sun's disk itself, raised to the heavens and showering its multiple rays of light over the royal family. Notably, each ray ended in a tiny hand offering life to the royalty, or even embracing their crowns or appendages. Additionally, Akhenaten changed how people worship the deity. Previously, rituals were carried out in small, darkened sanctuaries deep inside the temples. Instead, Akhenaten demanded that Aten be celebrated in open daylight with foodstuffs offered on outdoor tables. Moreover, in Aten's version of religious mythology, Aten created the earth, but specifically did so in order to create the king, with whom he has an intimate connection. According to some contemporary records, Akhenaten even communicated regularly with creatures that had descended from heaven. The ruler would have described himself as a direct descendant of these supernatural beings. To explain why this was the case, several pre-astronautics believe strongly that the pharaoh had extraterrestrial ancestors. So let's take a look at how the ruler was portrayed at the time. Akhenaten was often depicted with an unusually large, pointed skull. The strange overall impression is finally completed by the pharaoh's almond-shaped eyes and almost female-looking breasts. While pre-astronauts still attribute Akhenaten's unusual appearance to his extraterrestrial origins, conventional experts offer a different explanation. It has long been suspected that the ruler suffered from a hormonal disorder that was accompanied by some physical changes. In detail, it's said to have been the so-called acromegaly. This clinical picture describes a chronic excess of growth hormones. People suffering from this hormonal disorder can have, among other things, noticeably large feet, hands, ears, or noses. Another explanation put forward by art historians is that these depictions of Akhenaten were imaginative and meant to represent the male and female element combined in the single figure of the divine king. Alternatively, some posit that the images of Akhenaten with breasts are actually supposed to be representations of Nefertiti. However, the wild speculations that have always been made about the true identity of Akhenaten go even further. The assumptions that the king was in fact a woman, was an outcast priest, or was castrated on a campaign are just a few of the many theories that continue to fuel the Akhenaten legends to this day. Possible evidence. However, contemporary depictions of the putative alien king are not the only pieces of evidence the world of pre-astronautics has to offer. As already briefly mentioned, the extraterrestrial visitors were not only worshipped as holy gods by the people of that time, but also repeatedly came into direct contact with the inhabitants of the Earth. During these meetings, the aliens revealed secret knowledge to humans or even gifted them advanced technologies. This also includes the legendary light bulbs of Dendera. These are mysterious groups of reliefs that were discovered in a side room and in the basement vault of the eponymous temple of Dendera. In the corresponding depictions, we see divine beings holding strange flask-shaped objects, inside of which is a gigantic serpent. Now, there are different ways to interpret this strange figure. According to the convinced pre-astronauts, the objects can only be oversized light bulbs. This is an interpretation that quickly throws the entire historical worldview into chaos, because according to our official knowledge, the ancient Egyptians had no knowledge of electricity, let alone the ability to generate electric light. In truth, the ancient Egyptian world is said to have been far more mechanized than conventional history books claim. However, objects such as the Dendera light bulbs were by no means the fruit of ancient Egyptian experiments. The foundations for such inventions were based on the influences and knowledge transmitted by extraterrestrial beings. An engineer named Walter Garn actually tested this theory out. He created a model of the theoretical Egyptian light bulb based on the pre-astronauts hypothesis. However, he encountered serious problems. For example, the Jed pillar at the end of the piston-like object did not function like the insulator it was supposed to be. Garn thus concluded that the so-called light bulbs would not have been able to work with high voltages without an insulator. In contrast to the pre-astronautics view is the interpretation that the corresponding temple reliefs do not show any real everyday objects, but simply take up the religious myth of the ancient Egyptian deity, Ar-Somptis. What is often interpreted as a light bulb is actually a reference to the womb of the goddess Nut. According to the belief of the time, the sun hid in that body during the night, only to leave it again at dawn in the form of a snake. Mysterious boreholes. The so-called core drillings at Abu Sir are also among those finds from the past that do not seem to match the official historical picture. Around 15 kilometers from the mighty pyramids of Giza, there are some large blocks of an extremely hard type of rock called diorite. The special feature of these blocks? They're adorned with several circular drill holes, which seems nearly impossible given the extremely hard quality of diorite. This is also said to be the result of extraterrestrial technologies, because pre-astronauts believe that the tools that the ancient Egyptians had at their disposal simply would not have made such core drilling in diorite possible. On the other hand, there is an attempt at an explanation from the world of natural science and humanities, which says that the ancient Egyptian drilling tools were very well able to make such holes. This is also shown by the sarcophagus inside the Cheops pyramid, which was apparently drilled out before the smoothing. In fact, modern researchers from Manchester in the UK have managed to prove their theories using replica tools. As further support for their point of view, archaeologists also bring up the fact that core drilling techniques implemented with alien bones have also been observed on stone axes, hatchets, and hammers made of very hard river rock since the Neolithic Age, which is a significantly older period than ancient Egypt. All right, folks, now it's your turn. What do you think of the assumption that the ancient Egyptians were in regular contact with extraterrestrial beings? Do you believe that Akhenaten and other Egyptian kings were actually descended from aliens? Or are such assumptions nothing but outright nonsense? Let us know your thoughts on this exciting topic in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed our foray into the world of pre-astronautics. While you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to Top Welt and click the bell to stay up to date from now on. Thank you for watching. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.